Well, capital on a Tuesday night, and I'm very pleased to see, sitting opposite me, David Bowie. David, it's nice to see you back again.
Nice to see you back again.
And it's nice to be here.
Yes.
Glad you got in without losing too much of your hair. Anyway, welcome, and in the next 2 hours or so, anything can happen. Bit of sound and vision, which is basically what the next 2 hours is about, because as you've heard, my special guest tonight is David Bowie. David, once again, nice to see you back in the studio. And you're in town. You're in fact a very rare visitor to London, but you're here in town for the premiere of the movie Just a Gigolo, right?
Yeah.
Now, the original cut of this film, when it was seen, when a lot of the press saw it, they panned it terribly. And that was the original German cut that was made. Then David Hemmings spent long days and very long nights recutting the thing, which is what, in fact, the public are going to be seeing when the film goes on general release. Why was it originally cut by the Germans and then, sort of left and then came out sort of not actually working as well as you and David Hemmings would have hoped it would?
Yeah, well, as far as I can gather, because I was off doing my tours and whatever after the my part in the film is over. From what I understand, David went on holiday immediately after filming, and during the filming we'd had a lot of aggravation from the German production company about we wanted to do things in a particular manner, and they wanted to do them in quicker time and a bit cheaper than everything that David had in mind. So we knew from the start that it was sort of some kind of financial thing on the movie. They wanted to save money on some of the corners, and David went on holiday after the film. By the time he got back from holiday, they'd taken the thing away and they'd cut it themselves and had already started to try and sell it. And David freaked at that, and that's why the thing only came out in Germany, because he was able to stop it. And by that time they were already bringing it over to England and taking it to America and showing it here, there and everywhere. But fortunately David managed to get hold of all the bits and pieces and stole it in the night and came back to England and did his own cut in hiding and that's the one that's now going out in England, which is David's cut, the film that he wanted to make.
Have you actually seen the recut
I've
version?
now seen the David's cut, yes.
Yeah. Are you happy with
Well,
it?
it makes sense. There's a story there.
Yeah.
It's not just bits of incidents and all these sort of, I suppose, send-ups of the whole German period are back in again.
I'd like to talk to you a little later about that whole German period and your obvious sort of fascination for that era.
Sure.
But what I'd like to do while you're here this evening,
Yeah.
when we set this thing up, you said that you'd like to take some phone calls from our listeners, because it's been a
Absolutely,
long
sure.
time since they've talked to you. So if you do have a call for David, we're going to open the lines now. Can't promise you'll get through, but it'll be really first come, first served. 484-5255 if you do have a question for David, and we'll take as many as we possibly can in the time that David is here. And you've also chosen some records, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Some really off-the-wall stuff, let me tell you. But David's got some records as well, so we'll be playing some of those in the next 1 hour and 50 minutes. But I'd like to play a track from the Stage album, which is your most recent album. And can you tell us something about this film that's coming out? Because there is a film that David Hemmings has
Yeah.
made of that whole tour.
Well, we had sort of great ambitions in the beginning to do some kind of surreal thing, but what we've ended up with is a very straightforward film of the concert as it stands, and I hope that it sort of matches the album.
Okay, let's listen to a bit of...
I've been breaking glass in your room again. Listen, oh, don't look on your carpet. I drew something awful on it. See. You're such a wonderful person, but you got problems. Ooh, oh, oh, oh. I'll never touch you. I don't look on your carpet. I drew something awful on it. See, you're such a wonderful person, but you got problems. Oh, oh, oh. I'll never touch you. You're such a wonderful person, but you got problems. Oh, 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 oh. I'll never touch you. 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 I'll never touch you.
Some fond memories of Earl's Court there. My guest tonight, live in the studio, is David Bowie. I always blow that one. It's 9:15 and first call up. Good evening to Caroline. Hello, Caroline.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Davey.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Caroline.
Thank you. I hope you got my letter amongst the hoards.
Oh, I framed it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Please, so please.
What did you want to know?
Yeah, basically, I'm an
What do you do first?
Sorry?
What do you do?
Well, I'm an actress after a fashion, but not quite.
Which fashion are you after?
Aha. Now, come on, you can't kid me.
Can. Go on.
Well, basically, I'd like to know what your opinions, if you have any at all, on Stanislavski. Method.
Well, I like his earlier stuff, but when he got into the London scene, man, and started knocking around with the punks, it all fell to pieces, you know? Like, you take Method so far and that, but, well, he took it to New York, didn't he?
You did?
Yeah. I don't have one opinion on Stanislavski that I can think of.
Oh, you do shock me there. I thought you'd have some idea of... Well, obviously you do, but I thought perhaps you worked through the method.
Well, I like things like An Actor Prepares. They're good sort of documents, but not really being an actor in a cinematic sense or a stage sense, rather a rock actor. It's a different sort of kettle of poisson, so to speak.
Yes, I do.
Caroline, I must cut you short there because I want to get through as many calls as I possibly can, but thank you for ringing, love. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Now, the first record that you've given me, David, is Shapes of Things by the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
Why specifically this?
When I first heard what Keith Ralph was trying to do with a rhythm and blues band, I thought it very exciting, really, for the period. He was putting a techno society element into a rhythm and blues context, and that I found very exciting at the time.
Okay.
Just teach me to despise. Won't time make man more wise? Here, within my own frame, my eyes just hurt my brain. But oh, it seemed the same. Come tomorrow, will I be older? Come tomorrow, may be a soldier. Come tomorrow, may I be bolder than today. Now, the trees are almost green, but will they still be seen when time and pride have been? Oh, and the towns, please don't destroy these lands. Don't make them desert sands. Come tomorrow, will I be older? Come tomorrow, may be a soldier. Come tomorrow, may I be bolder than today. I will find those deep within my mind that won't disgrace my kind.
Chosen by David Bowie, Yardbirds and Shapes of Things. When was the last time you heard that?
Oh, about 3 weeks ago.
You've just blown the question. What memories does that have for you, listening back to that now?
Richmond,
Yeah.
AA Athletic Ground,
Because a year after that, you actually joined Lindsay Kemp
Yeah.
around that time.
around that period, yeah.
Now, with the benefit of hindsight, it's always easier to say with the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
Do you think that actually being with Lindsay and around him at that time, that you've actually gained a lot? I mean, a lot of what you are today
Oh,
is
God,
down to
an
that.
extraordinary amount. As you probably have gathered over the last few years, I'm pretty eclectic, and I borrow and steal everything that fascinates me. I'm sort of a jackdaw, or is it a magpie? I can never remember. And Lindsay introduced me to things like Cocteau and the Theatre of the Absurd and Antonin Artaud and the whole idea of restructuring and going against what people generally expect and sometimes for the shock value, sometimes as an educational force, but whatever. But he just gave me the idea of that you can experiment with the arts and do things and take dangerous risks that you wouldn't do in real life. And so you can use it as a sort of an experimental area for trying out new lifestyles without actually having to take the consequences.
But you've always sort of taken those chances, haven't you, in real life?
Well, yeah. When I started with the characters, I would put myself through terrible experiences and terrible positions to write about what I thought they would feel, until I really cottoned onto the idea, mainly through Brian Eno, who sort of put it more into focus for me, that you could do all the experimentation in the actual creating of the music and not actually have to put your body through the same kind of risks that you do when you put it through those things to write insights into how people go through terrible things.
Because I remember seeing a film of you towards the end of the Ziggy era. I think it was a BBC
Yeah,
film.
that was Alan Yentob's Omnibus, I think.
Where, in fact, you did look like, I mean, the whole thing was just about to fall apart.
A survivor, just.
Yes,
sort of
just. I mean, a
clinging
rock
on.
and roll casualty.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I was. That was just before the point where I left LA. I mean, it got worse from that film. It got into a state that you wouldn't believe. And that's when, fortunately, I had friends, and they all said they were leaving me because I was just I was impossible to be with.
But you actually put your body through that whole process.
Yes, and my head and every
and the
other
whole thing.
every organic part of me.
I'd love to continue this now, but in fact we'll take a break. We'll continue it in about 90 seconds. It's just after 9:20. My guest on this Tuesday night is David Bowie, and also on the phone is Barry. Barry, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Dave.
Hello, Barry.
How are ya?
Not too bad, thank you, Barry.
Good. I'd like to know what inspires you to write your songs at the moment, and what instruments do you write on, or do you use?
Well, okay. I guess I've stopped using instruments to write on. I think most of the things that I do these days are on the occasion of the studio. I go in with very little preparation, but maybe some ideas of what... You see, the one thing about music is that it's a wonderful way of people to work together. It's a collective thing. It's one of the few things that you can do in life where you can bring so many people together and have them work in a collective capacity.
Yeah.
And so, utilizing that kind of pre-knowledge, you go in and you throw ideas out, and you might make little experiments. Kinds of things that Brian and I were doing were sort of say, look, here's 50 seconds, play 10 notes in that 50 seconds, and don't repeat the same note twice. And then they'd all have to do that.
Yeah.
And then we might make that into a tape loop and then write something over that.
Yeah.
That kind of feeling, rather than sitting down at a piano and writing something where it's supposed to be trying to fulfill the artist's concept of something. There's no governor, no controller, is the point.
You seem to be doing that a lot more now than you used to.
Oh, I'm doing it all the time.
Really?
I must say I'm still quite a reactionary, because I go back to the old songwriting techniques at times, if you know, just because I like doing that as well. I'm not Brian's far more forward-thinking than me in some areas, and he will take the whole thing to an extreme, whereas I sort of, you know, I fluctuate between the two styles, between old-fashioned songwriting and this other kind of way.
You work well together. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much, Barry.
How did Heroes come about? I mean, which method did you use for that one? The title track?
That was very much a combination of Brian's piano technique and my piano technique, which are both dastardly and end up sending out the Velvet Underground.
I'm going to fade that there because we're getting a little late with our commercial breaks. But during that was playing, we were talking about the German version that we played on Your Mother quite a few times and got an incredible response to it. And I was saying how much there is more power. If you've heard the German version of Heroes, the single, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's got loads of power to it, more so in fact than the English version.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
Well, a number of reasons. I think, atmospherically, I was in Berlin. I was looking at the wall through this, probably the renowned Hansa studio by now. You can see the wall and the turret and whatever. Looking at that, and also that's where the incident was written, which is the main central theme of the song. And also, plus the fact that I was singing in in a foreign language. And so I was fighting the language, and I think I probably gave it more impetus. And I did that version before I did the English version. So when I eventually got to the English version, I think I might have tempered it down a bit and started getting a bit too sophisto about how I was going to deal with the interpretation.
Because there was a great deal of interest in that German version. It would have been nice to just release that rather than have to go to import shops, and it's changing hands now at ridiculous prices. Anyway, you're listening to Capital in stereo on 95.8 and 194 meters medium wave. I'm Nicky Horn. My guest tonight is David Bowie, and Rona is going to be on the phone in just a minute. And good evening to Rona. Hello, Rona.
Hello, Dave.
Hello, Rona.
Shut up. Who's been influenced by?
Sorry, we didn't get that, love.
Who have your paintings been influenced by? The style of painting?
Well, very simple, really. I nick a lot of ideas from... There was a school in Germany It started about 1918. Just at the end of the First World War, a bunch of very dissatisfied artists, and they called themselves the Brücke, which means the bridge, and they wanted to paint in a new way, and they formed this school called the German Expressionist School, and one of them was called Erich Heckel, and I suppose if you look at a Heckel and you look at some of my things, you'll think, not dissimilar. So it's Erich Heckel, really. But most of those guys were sort of thrown out of Germany just before the Second World War, of course. So the whole thing went to pieces, and Hitler burnt most of the best of the works, so not many of them survived now.
No, he wasn't very nice. Were you ever going to see your paintings on exhibition?
I've considered it. When I've got enough, and when enough people have patted me on the head and said, "Very good, David," I might show them somewhere, but at the moment I don't have any plans now.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for calling, Rona. Good night. In fact, talking about Germany, that brings us nicely onto the film, Just a Gigolo, which is going to be on general release or selected release, rather, from this coming Sunday. Was one of the reasons for doing the film, I know that a lot of people have said that because Marlene Dietrich, it was her sort of first appearance for N number of years. How much was it a bait for you to appear in it? How much of a bait was she for you to appear in? How much did it work the other way around?
Well, I think it made an enormous impression upon me that Miss D had said that she would do the film if I would do it. And likewise, I said, well, if it's a promise that she's doing the film, I'll do it. Let's sort of leave it at that.
Because you must have been terribly flattered by the fact that she even knew you.
Oh my God, it was incredible. She said very nice things about me, and in fact, she was playing the side 2 of the Low album to all her friends, which I thought was just terrific.
Going back to the film, or in fact staying with the film, you once said that one of your favourite writers was Christopher Isherwood.
Yes.
Whose stories and books sort of formed the basis really of Cabaret.
Yeah.
Which dealt with the sort of decadence in Germany, and obviously Just a Gigolo deals with that as well. Do you have a sort of fascination for that period, and was that one of the reasons why you accepted the film
I think it was the idea of Christopher's idea of contradictions, that he always put himself in a position that was fairly dangerous. It was the same kind of thing. He went to Germany because he thought it was the political melting pot of Europe, that everything that was going to happen would show itself in Berlin. That applied then, and I feel it has been applying over the last 2 or 3 years as well in Berlin. That all the unrest and the political unrest that's happening there, the breaking down of ethnic groups into different areas, and the lack of sort of liaison between them is starting to show itself all over Europe. But I think it started in Berlin a few years ago, and I wanted to be there. I would like to think that I was some kind of Isherwood, in as much I would like to say I could have observed what was happening in Europe, being sort of on the outside looking in.
There is this amazing fascination, though, for that time and the decadence that goes with it. Really.
Well, you wouldn't find that in Berlin now. It's not. It's anything but a decadent city. It's decadent in as much that one of its contradictions is that the wall is around it, not to the wall is around there to keep the West Germans from going into East Germany. That's the official explanation for the wall. I mean, it's sort of life is made up in that pattern there.
Are you hoping to record there again, or was that just a one-off thing?
Well, two-off thing really.
Yeah.
Low and both Low and Heroes were sort of done there. It's likely I might record there again. Yes.
Because the last time that we met, you said that you needed that the feeling of the city to actually be able to create it. It sort of helped the whole process.
Yeah.
This new album that you're doing with Brian Eno. Where has that been done? Has that been done there as well?
It started off in Switzerland and it's drifting down to Berlin again.
All right, let's get back to music. And one of the tracks that you chose was a thing by Wray. Would you like to tell me why you decided on this one?
Just the most exciting guitarist that happened during his period.
All right, this is the
Look, Bruce! It's the bat signal!
Yes, are you ready, Robin?
Yes, Batman! Batman, shall I start the nuclear power for the Batmobile?
Right again, Robin.
Okay, Batman.
Wray, and that was the Batman theme. It's nearly 20 to 10. My guest live in the studio is David Bowie. Going back to the movie once again, a lot of people who have seen the film in its new recut version have said that in a way your acting is rather wooden.
Stiff.
Well, stiff, yes. I mean, that's what a lot of people have said.
I had the wrong trousers on, probably.
Now, in The Man That Fell to Earth, you really had to be less of an actor in that film because there was a sort of mystical quality to the character you were playing, which is very much that's surrounded you and has almost become your image over the last X number of years. But in this film, you had to be more of an actor. You were actually directed by, obviously, David Hemmings.
Yeah.
And now, did you actually feel happy in doing this movie, or did you feel as if it was a slightly wooden experience?
I'm not happy because the one thing David told me was, David, act stiff.
Really? Fine. No, you were saying that the guy that you play is actually a wimp anyway and makes very wooden movements. So a lot of people...
well, he's only a soldier, and I think that he's he's happiest in the whole film when he's dead, because that's where he really feels at one with himself. That's my excuse.
Okay, we will go to the phones now. Get me out of this. Peter, hello. Peter, are you there?
Evening.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you?
All right, thank you.
Fine, there are two things I'd like to say, actually. First of all, I'd like to give you a very personal thank you, because I consider that all the work you've turned out in the 70s has been of such an incredibly high standard.
And you must be one of the few artists that I can go out and buy an LP without having heard any tracks or reading reviews, and I know that it's going to be extremely good. Secondly, I'd like to ask you a question about Low and Heroes, side 2. I was particularly interested in this form of music, the direction that this music took. I was wondering if we can look forward to any more of this type of music in forthcoming albums, and whether or not it's true that Low and Hero are part of a trilogy.
Okay, well, for the first part of what you said, thank you very much. For the second part, yes, you can.
Oh, terrific.
I think that I'll be still trying to create atmospheres, and I think that they will sort of. I'll still be bouncing off cities really for the atmospheres.
That's fantastic, because Subterraneans and Warsaw, I think, were particularly, and Sense of Doubt were particularly atmospheric. In fact, I'm even thinking I sort of make films as a sort of amateur hobby.
Yeah.
I'd like to put films to these music if
That's funnily enough, I must tell you. It's all right, mine's not coming out, but when I was in Russia, when I took the Trans-Siberian Express thing, I took a lot of footage there, and I started putting those particular pieces, Subterraneans and Warsaw, against what I'd taken on just 8mm.
Really?
Yeah, and it is very effective. I advise you to go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah.
I'm flattered, thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. If you're ever in Southend-on-Sea, pop in and I'll show you my films, and you can bring yours as well.
Definitely, we'll have a cine evening.
Right, cheers then.
Okay, thank you for calling, by the way. This next record that you like, which plays Lou Reed and Velvet Underground, and White Lights, White. guitar on
Wasn't
there.
that? Was it? Who was that? That sounded like Steve Hunter. That wasn't the original version.
No, that was from a compilation album. We
Yeah.
didn't have the original version in the library. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. Sounded
It's-
like Steve Hunter. Probably wrong, but
It's just gone 9:45, and Tony is on the blower. Hello, Tony.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hello, David. Thanks very much indeed for appearing on the Nicky Horn show.
it's a very great pleasure. Hello, Tony.
Hello. I'd like to ask you two questions.
Yes.
First of all, there's a film of your Hammersmith Odeon concert, I believe.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Is there any chance of the general public seeing that one?
I think so. I don't own it. You see. I really don't know.
Shots of it on TV.
The bits of it on TV, are there?
Anyway, there's also
What?
another sorry?
Did you say there were bits of it on TV?
There were littered about.
I expect somebody's thinking of putting it out then.
Great. Also, I'd like to ask you, you were considering becoming a Buddhist monk.
Yes.
And I was just wondering whether the experiences you had there were of any benefit to you at the present moment.
I've never really sorted that out. I think at the time I was really sort of very earnest about it, being sort of 19-ish.
Yeah.
One does get a little overly earnest, I think, at 19. Not that it's a bad thing. I think it's very instructive to put yourself through those kinds of things. But when push came to shove, I realised that there must be something in the West that I could adhere to, rather than something in the East, that surely we must have some kind of spiritual backbone in the West. And I guess everything since has been some kind of search for it.
You haven't found it yet, then?
I'm starting to get a general picture of what we possibly could be doing to look after ourselves, but I'm not entirely sure, no. I'm still half in dreams, half in reality.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Tony, thank you for calling. Cheers, good night. In fact, talking of that stage film, the one that David Hemmings has directed,
Yeah.
we didn't actually say when that was coming out, if at all. Is it now finished?
There's a little bit more to do with the editing, but then it's ready. I don't know when it's going to come out exactly.
Okay, well, while we have to wait for that, let us play something from the stage album. This is Warzawa. from the stage album. I was saying actually when that went on to David that it was a very brave move to start the concert off with that. When you suddenly appeared or you were on stage with the rest of the band instead of making the normal mandatory entrance.
Yes.
And to start with something like that when everyone is waiting for Suffragette City was very brave move, and it seemed to work as well.
Yes. Yeah.
But I was, yeah. But I was also saying that on the night that I saw you, I was lucky enough to sit in about the 6th row or something like that, and it was being filmed by David Hemmings, and I felt very much that you were playing to the camera and not to the audience, and in that sense, because the week previous to that, I'd seen Bob Dylan in the same venue, which, as you know, is just a giant bathroom, and there was a large amount of communication from the stage to the audience, and I felt that was sadly lacking in the concert, to be honest.
Was he being filmed as well?
No, he wasn't.
Oh, there you are then.
But you were playing to the cameras.
I guess I put about 50-50.
Yeah.
Yes. When you're aware that you're being a sort of a film object, I think you unhappily do play to the camera an awful lot.
But at a gig like that, I mean, the compromise surely is to... Well, I mean, there should not be a compromise, really.
Well, if life isn't No, I compromise all down. That's the trouble. People are such extremists.
Let's talk to Mark on the phone. Hello, Mark.
Hello?
Hi.
Dave?
Hello, Mark.
Hello?
Hello.
I just wanted to know whether you object to your lookalikes at all.
Okay, there's... No, of course I don't. It's great. I mean, it's very entertaining for me. For the first sort of few rows that I can see. But on the other hand, what do you think a lookalike does with his lookalike? Do you think he just puts it on for the concert?
No, well, you see lookalikes. You see Bowie lookalikes walking around the street every day.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to admit, you must start off most of the
Well,
fashion.
what I was thinking is, do you think that they walk around just wanting to look like David Bowie, or do you think they walk around with a lookalike on as an alternative lifestyle? Do you know what I mean? Do you think they take that look and make it their own, so that they feel they can add to it with their own identity?
I'm not really sure. I reckon they just respect you and they want to look like David Bowie.
I think it's sort of quite... I mean, I did the same kind of thing myself with various people that I admired. I mean, if I sort of flashed on somebody for a few months or something, I'd sort of wear exactly what he wore, said what he said. And I think it's important to sort of use that particular device to add to yourself or to find things within yourself rather than just becoming the artist or trying to sort of just be the artist that you're modelling. I like lookalikes, but I think they should use the looks for the right reason, which is to sort of discover other little eccentricities in themselves.
Yeah.
Is that any kind of answer at all?
Well, I'm a bit confused, but...
Listen, so am I. Why do you think I keep changing?
intelligent than me. Do you mind if a friend of mine speaks to you, just says hello to you?
Yes.
Very briefly, because we're coming up to the news.
Hello, friend.
Hello?
Hello, friend.
It's Georgina.
Hi, Georgina.
Well, it's a very quick question. When's your next tour going to be?
1980 or 1981.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Georgina, thank you for calling.
Yeah.
And Mark, thank you as well. Okay, we're coming up to the news, David, so time to relax for a few moments. Let's go up to the news with V2. Capital and Your Mother, and me and him will be back after the news. Hi there, it's Capital. I'm Nicky Horn. My guest this evening is David Bowie, as he puts his headphones on. And you've asked me to play out of the news, which has in fact just come from the record library, a record by Talking Heads.
Yeah.
While I just cue it up, because it is not yet on the turntable, could you just say why?
Okay, right. Well, I think it's quite relevant to the Yardbirds' Shapes of Things to Come, really. When you listen to the lyric content of this, and when you listen to the Yardbirds, I think you've got a decade's worth of experience in there.
Very Talking Heads. We were talking about the sort of current state of music while that was playing, and talking about the sort of current disco thing that has escalated in every chart, in every conceivable chart that there is. Disco is in there somewhere. We were talking about the Young Americans album, which really started soul. It was your R&B thing, which was soul with soul. It seems to me now that a lot of the disco records are soul-orientated records, but have no soul. I mean, it's the sort of stuff that you can dance to.
Yeah.
But when you actually come to put a pair of headphones on, I mean, it's instantly disposable. What's your feeling about the current state of play in that area? If you like?
Well, I think what I was trying to capture was what was happening in Philly and New York 5 years or so ago. and trying to put it onto plastic. It was a rather sardonic look at it, I must admit. But it was, I guess, the first of its kind. It was really white disco at that time. It was played in discos, and Fame subsequently became very big and whatever. But disco has taken on a new face in as much that it streamlined itself and orientated itself more toward the national heartbeat feel, where the heartbeat is the thing that holds all the dancers together. And I think why people do get such a kick out of it, and in fact, when I'm feeling sort of very isolated or out of things and I want to feel as though I am important, then I will go to a disco for one reason, and that is that I can compete on the dance floor with no social responsibility, no responsibilities to any boss, knowing that that responsibility in real life is is totally meaningless anyway. That, you know, you go and clock in a factory, but where's it all going anyway, looking around? But you can go and compete knowing there is no real responsibility on your shoulders. It's a sort of, you're a micro-corporate competitor on the dance floor with no responsibilities. I think that has a lot to do with it.
But how do you feel about the sort of disposability, if you like, of the music? The fact that it is, you know, here today,
oh, well,
gone
that's
tomorrow,
fine.
and
That's
it doesn't
great.
just last.
That's okay. I mean, I've loved disposable music. I'll try and get you to play a thing called Paralyzed by a certain gentleman that happened a few years ago, which was completely disposable music.
Right.
I think disposable music is not something of the future, but it has happened now. The only thing is that it's not being produced on flimsies. Do you know flimsies, where it's just a bit of very thin plastic where the record's punched out onto it, and it's often given away with magazines? I think that might become more important, and you'll pick them up in supermarkets at a very cheap price, and you can play them until they wear out and throw them away because they had no merit for longevity anyway. They are for the moment. I see nothing wrong with momentary music.
Let's go to the phones, because we've ignored those for about 15 minutes, for which I apologise. Karen, hello, you're on the phone.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, David.
Hello, Karen.
Can I ask you two questions?
Yeah.
First of all, do you think you'll ever live in London?
There's a stronger and stronger possibility, because London is having the same kind of friction feel that I felt in other areas of the world. I'm feeling more and more disorientated every time I come to London, so it's becoming more attractive to me.
Good. I hope you come over then. And, where'd you get them white sailors from?
Where'd I get them white sailor's trousers from? Well, once upon a time... Are you sitting comfortably?
Yes.
Then we'll begin. Once upon a time, I was with the Lindsay Kemp Mime Company, and there was a wonderful seamstress who worked for the company called Natasha Kornilov, who comes from Russia, and she used to make all our clothes for us, and sort of at a moment's notice. And I called her up just before the tour, and I said, Natasha, make me something. So she made me something, and that was it.
Oh, and, well, I hope you come over to London anyway, okay?
I am in London.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you know what I mean. You live
I know what you mean, yes.
Okay.
Karen, thank you for calling.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Talking about the fact that you feel uncomfortable in London intrigues me and worries me, and I think would worry a lot of people as well. Remember the last time you were here when there was that wonderful incident on Victoria Station that got blown out of all proportion by the press, the quote, in quotes, fascism thing?
Yes, I remember it all too well.
Do you feel that now is sort of coming or closer than it was? I mean, is that is that why you feel uncomfortable here?
Not really, no. I
happens
think
to be
enough
going
silly
on?
sods have put that party in its place, but I think the feeling here is the whole thing that Burgess has been saying in 1979, a novel which I relish and I think is very accurate about the whole takeover here and the eventual collapse of our present system to be replaced by somebody make a record about it.
I'm sure you will. Let's go back to...
I thought I had.
the young American.
We pulled into thing. Am I still too young? He kissed the violin there. She took his ring, took his babies. It took him minutes, took her nowhere. Heaven knows he'd have taken anything. All night. She was a young American. Young American, young American. She was the young American. All right. She was the young American. Standing right through the picture window, she finds a slinky vagabond. He coughs as he passes a foot in the stain. Heaven forbid she's taking anything but the freak and his title for nothing. This is a step and cuts his hand, showing nothing. It swoops like a song, she cries. Where have all Papa's heroes gone? All night. She wants a young American. Young American, young American. She wants a young American. All right. Well, she wants a young American. All the way from Washington. Her breadwinner begs off the bathroom floor. We live for just these 20 years till we have to die for the 50 more. And all night, he wants the young American. Young American, young American. He wants the young American. All right, but he wants the young American. Do you remember your President Nixon? Do you remember the bills you have to pay, or even yesterday? Have you been on America? Just you and your idle symbols set so loud. Leather, leather everywhere, and not a miss left from the ghetto. Well, would you carry your visa? Just in case of depression. Sit on your hands on the bus of survivors, blushing at all the Afro sealers. Ain't that close to love? Well, ain't that close to love? Well, it ain't that Barbie doll. Her heart's been broken just like you and all night. What the young American, young American, young American. All right, you want the young American. You ain't a pimper, you ain't a horse. A pimp's got a caddy and a lady got a glacier. Black's got the stack, white's got a soul train. Mama's got cramps and look at your handshake. I heard the news today, no more. I got a sweet and you got the feet. Is there a man who can say no more? Is there a woman I can suck on the jaw? And is there a child I can help with that judging? Is there a pen that will write before they die? Ain't you proud that you stuck our faces? Ain't there one dance song that can make me break down and cry? All night, I want the young American. Young American, the young American. I want the young American. I want the young American, young American, young American. I want with you, I want with you, you want what I want you, I want you, I want you.
It's Capital, and Your Mother Wouldn't Like It. My guest tonight, live in the studio, is David Bowie, listening very intently towards the end of that in the headphones. What memories do that bring back?
Can I just make an interruption and digress completely?
Okay.
I made a dirty mistake for poor Anthony Burgess. The title of the book is 1985. I got my years messed up. 1979 is in fact another book called The Crash of 79, which only applies to America. But 85 is the book. 1985.
You digressed.
Do go out and buy it.
Young Americans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What memories does it have? Oh, I think living in the Puerto Rican area of New York, learning to dance Spanish style, going to great clubs, pretty chicks, living a life of bliss, height of fame, smashing stuff. All had to end.
Sounds great. It's 20 past 10. It's at 11. It's Kerry Juby for Tony Myatt on The Late Show. Here's another one that David chose. This is La Düsseldorf. La Düsseldorf. La Düsseldorf. And La Düsseldorf. You were saying as we just put that on, this is the sound of the 80s. Well, I paraphrased, but that was the implication.
I think it's the folk song of the 80s.
And they're part of
It's
craft.
about an airport,
Yeah.
but it also has a slight disco feeling to it. And I think that combination of folk disco, folks.
Folk disco.
Yeah.
That's it, is it?
That's what we're waiting for.
Now, someone would like to talk to you about reggae. I believe his name is Eddie. Hello, Eddie.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello, Eddie.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you a question about the premiere tomorrow, but I've been told there's been too many questions about that. And
What did you want to know about the premiere, Eddie?
well, actually, David, I've got tickets
Have you?
to go tomorrow.
Could you let me have a couple, love? I can't get in anywhere.
with.
I'm going to try through the tradesman, but you know,
No,
I'll get somebody on the inside to open up the exit door, and I'll get in.
I'm going along with my girlfriend and my cousin.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if it'd be possible to meet you.
I'll be sitting in row F15,
No.
wearing a big hat and funny boots.
Sorry? No, actually,
Wheel wave. Now, what do you want to know about reggae?
I'd like to know if you like reggae and if you've listened to much.
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, I lived in Brixton, and what we heard a lot of there was ska, which was sort of, I suppose, the progenitor of reggae. It was ska first, and then it became blue beat, and then it ended up as reggae. So I have a certain affinity to it, with it, rather. I like it, yes. It hasn't influenced much of what I've done, I must admit. Funnily enough, there is I've got a cross-reference thing on the new album that I've done where I've put reggae against another culture which produces... I'm not telling you the other culture, give it all away, which produces an interesting effect, but the fundamental beat of reggae hasn't influenced me very much. But I do like it. In fact, I corrupted one of the songs in the last stage show, What in the World, and I made it sort of reggae in the beginning.
Yeah. And what do you think of New Wave?
But darling, I am New Wave.
Have you ever met any of the Sex Pistols?
Unfortunately, no. Well, briefly I met Johnny Rotten, but we didn't talk. Because I went to see an Iggy show, and he went to see an Iggy show, and sort of he was talking to Iggy, so I sort of, being a Capricorn, sat on the back and just watched.
Eddie, thanks for your call, mate. Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye. In fact, you were talking about Brian Eno there, and you're talking about the new album. One of the tracks that you've asked me to play is from Here Come the Warm Jets, Eno, which we'll play in just a moment after we take a break. But I heard that Eno has now disappeared. He's gone away.
Yes.
For a long holiday. What is...
Well,
what's
what
the story?
happened is that toward the end of the album, he said, David. I said, yes, Brian. He said, David, I'm going away, David. I said, yes. He said, I'm going away for rather a long time. Yes, Brian. Well, what I mean is, I'm going away for a year or two. I said, you're not serious. He said, yes, I am. And he left the next day, and I didn't hear a word from him till last week when he wrote me a letter, care of Kuala Walla Walla, or somewhere. And he's out on a desert island in the east, and he said, I'm going to stay here for another year, and I think that my whole career will be left on the beach and swamped by new wave after new wave.
Capital, your mother, and David Bowie. Disappeared, has he?
Yes, and Brian usually carries out everything he says he's going to do, so I think he probably will stay away for a very long time, but he tends to do that.
Does that not present problems for the new album? Because, I mean, you're halfway sort of getting that together with
Well,
Brian.
Brian and I have always worked in fairly peculiar sort of fashion. I mean, Brian goes in the studio and does something, then I go in later and do it, or I go in first and then he comes in. Very rarely do we ever work together. Fortunately, on this last one, Brian's already done everything he's going to do, and I'm going in next, and I'll do my bit, and then the thing will come out.
How close to completion is that album?
About 50%. Fine.
Baby's on fire. Better throw her in the water. Look at her laughing like a heifer to the slaughter. Baby's on fire, and all the laughing boys are bitching, waiting for photos. Oh, the plot is so bewitching.
25 to 11 on this cold and wet Tuesday night. Hello, it's Capital and your mother, my guest, David Bowie, live in the studio. And that was Brian Eno and Baby's on Fire. Let's go back, David, to this new album that's coming out.
Yes.
Have you got a tentative release date for it?
Yes, about the first week in May.
And about the style of the album,
Yeah.
how would you describe it? Is it like Heroes, like Low? I mean,
Okay, it's built up of contradictions and ironies. Now, I'll give you a little story. And this is sort of visually what it sounds like. Imagine I walked into a punk club in Berlin, and it was green and red and white neon, and they were celebrating the anniversary of the putting up of the Berlin Wall. To celebrate this, they had made a great big long 15-foot ice-covered cake of the wall, complete with turrets and machine guns. It was put in the middle of the floor, and all the punks ate it. The album sounds like that.
sounds fascinating. First week in May.
Yes.
Okay, we've got someone on the phone who I believe is the conductor for the Ballet Rambert. Is that right?
Hello.
Have I described that right,
I'm
Paul?
one of the conductors.
Paul, isn't it?
That's right.
Hi, good evening.
Hello.
Good evening, Paul. It's David here.
Hello. I got a musical question.
Natasha made clothes for your lot, didn't she?
You what?
Natasha made clothes for your lot.
That's right. And Lindsay Kemp actually has done 2 of the pieces.
Yes, I know.
Anyway, my question's a musical one.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself, first of all, to be part of a European school of rock, which is in friendly opposition with an American school of rock? And secondly, through your work with Brian Eno and, through other things that you've been listening to over the years, do you consider yourself to be influenced at all by any of the avant-garde classical composers, and if so, which ones?
In pure elitist fashion, I guess, yes, I'm part of the European school of rock. Is that succinct enough?
Yeah.
On the second part of the question, yeah, I mean, against that, I mean, I'm terribly influenced by people like Steve Reich and Philip Glass.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a certain American constructionist kind of feeling to some of the things that I do.
Right.
Is that full enough?
Yeah, I was thinking more of the European people. I mean, if
Not really. I mean,
I can see the Steve Reich reference.
yeah.
But I was thinking, if there was anybody European, specifically the guys who've worked with Brian,
I guess not really,
No?
No, not really.
Because I didn't...
I'd like to be able to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you have a lot of admiration for Kraftwerk.
Well, let's say early Kraftwerk.
Right.
Not so much their later stuff.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I do like Edgar Froese a lot.
Uh-huh.
His solo work, not his work with Tangerine Dream, but I understand there's a very good new Tangerine album out now, but I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah.
But as up to date, I mean, Edgar's solo work, I think, is far superior than his work with the band.
Yeah.
As far as France, I think there's a lot of interesting people in France. I don't think they've actually got to where they want to go yet, being the French. It's sort of, it's all still a bit, we're all very left-wing, but we still want to eat a good meal and, have it covered in wine.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Paul, thank you for calling.
Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers, okay. Here's something from Diamond Dogs, and I don't think it's been played for ages. Big Brother. Okay, I'm a dummy. I played the wrong track. Forgive me. I will now put it on the other track, alright? So you asked specifically for this one, okay. Proves it's live.
Don't talk of dust and roses, or should we powder our noses? Don't live for last year's capers. Oh, give me steel, give me pulses unreal. He'll build a glass asylum with just a hint of mayhem. We'll build a better world, boy. We'll be living from sin, and we can really begin. He's Savior, Savior, shores. Hear me, I'm graphically yours. Someone to claim us, someone to follow, someone to shame us, some brave Apollo, someone to rule us, someone like you. We want you, big brother, big brother. I know you think you're awful square, but you need everyone, you feel everywhere. Lord, I think it's overdose if you knew what's going down. Someone to claim us, someone to follow, someone to shame us, some brave Apollo, someone to rule us, someone like you. Someone to claim us, someone to follow, someone to shame us, some brave Apollo, someone to rule, someone like you. Someone to claim us, someone to follow, someone to shame us, some brave Apollo, someone to rule, someone like you. We want you, big brother. Brother, ooh, ooh. Shake it up, shake it up. Move it up, move it up. Brother, ooh, ooh. Shake it up, shake it up. Move it up, move it up. Brother, ooh, ooh. Shake it up, shake it up. Move it up, move it up. Brother, ooh, ooh. Shake it up, shake it up. Move it up, move it up. Brother, ooh, ooh. Shake it up, shake it up. Move it up, move it up. Brother, ooh, ooh. Shake it up, shake it up. Move it up, move it up.
It's nearly 11:15. David Bowie from Diamond Dogs. And I think we'll probably have time for two more calls. Paul, I believe you're on the line. Hello, Paul.
Hello, David.
Hello, Paul.
Hello, I'd like to ask you...
How old are you, Paul?
I'm 14.
Hello.
Hello. I'd like to ask you your opinion on the pirate cassettes and the bootlegging of concerts.
Yeah. Okay, I think a lot of us have that problem, of course. I think what the real problem... I mean, I've heard a lot of bootlegs that I like very much. I think they're really nice pieces. I tell you what, I would like the people who have those bootlegs to come to me and tell me they got those bootlegs, because having written the songs and done the performance, I'd like to be paid for them.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't think I don't think bootlegs are inferior. Some of them have a quality of their own, which you will never capture on a pre-recorded kind of thing where everything is sort of organised. It's not that fact. Creatively, some of them are very interesting, but I'd like to be paid for what I do. I've always liked being paid for what I do. I guess that's my sum up of it. Really, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and on the Pin-Ups record,
Yeah.
the last track, I think...
I mean, I paid all them, didn't I? I paid Ray Davies, didn't I?
Yeah.
Paid Sid Barrett, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
On the last track, it
Yeah.
sounds like the Aladdin Sane record.
Last track was Where Have All the Good Times Gone?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that where you got it from?
I'll have to re-listen to that. Well, maybe one day we'll play them back to back and see what the similarities are.
Yeah.
That's quite possible. I mean, you know, it's not unheard of.
Nicky, can I say a quick hello?
Yes, of course. Quick.
I'd like to say hello to my mum and my dad, and Mark Franklin in Stanmore, who is listening, and everyone in Class 3A of Stanmore Secondary.
Oh, especially everyone in Class 3A, yeah.
Yeah, right?
All right, thanks for calling, Paul.
Good night, Class 3A.
Stars crashing. Stars crashing down. I feel tragic like I was modern brand new. When I look at my China girl, I could pretend that nothing really meant too much. When I look at my China girl. I stumbled into town just like a sacred cow. Visions of swastikas in my head and plans for everyone. It's in the little China girl, you shouldn't mess with me. I'll ruin everything you are. I'll give you television. I'll give you eyes of blue. I'll give you men who wanna rule the world. And when I get excited, my little China girl says, oh, Jimmy, just keep the shut your mouth. She says, shh.
Iggy Pop and China Girl. 10 to 11 after the news at 11. Kerry Juby for Tony Myers. The last 10 minutes of your mother with my very special guest tonight, David Bowie. What's happened to Iggy? Are you still in contact?
Firstly, isn't that a lovely track?
Yes.
It's very romantic. The most romantic thing I think Jimmy's recorded. Jimmy as we know him in the...
What's happened to Jimmy?
Well, at the moment he's in Los Angeles recording a new album, and I can tell you it's with James Williamson, all you Stooges fans. So it'll have a lot of the old Stooges feel to it.
Okay, listen, we got time for one more telephone call, and that comes from Andy. Hello, Andy.
Hello?
Hi. Welcome.
Hello, David.
Hello, Andy.
I was wondering whether you think your track, 1984, will ever come to pass.
Well, there's a bunch of writers, literary writers and rock writers, that have always had a sort of apocalyptic vision of what the world will become in the future. Isherwood was sort of one, I guess. George Orwell was another. Now, George Orwell sort of inspired that track, of course, because his book was called 1984. And originally the idea was to make 1984 into a musical, but I got lost in a tangent and it became Diamond Dogs. But 1984 stayed in it. I guess these days I'm feeling a bit more positive than I used to feel. I think we can sort of pull through the whole thing. I'd like to feel that 1984 could never happen. What are you going to do about it?
What am I going to do about it?
Yes. Sleep on that.
Actually, personally, I can see it happening. The way things are going now.
That's what I'm hearing from everybody. It's a bit despondent, isn't it? Isn't there a more constructive attitude, do you think? Somewhere along the line? From station to station?
Yes, which is a nice way to actually finish this. David, thank you very much indeed for coming in. I hope you've enjoyed it.
It's been
jolly good fun.
a lovely, lovely time. I've really enjoyed myself.
The last time that you were here, we were talking about transience and that being very much part of everything. And during the interview, you said that you were thinking of using London perhaps as a base, perhaps.
Yeah.
Are you still enjoying that complete transience, that not having a base?
It would be nice to pop back to a place and get a newspaper of fish and chips every now and again, in between Istanbul and Moscow, you know.
Well, from station to airport, David, thank you for coming in once again. And the next time you're here, feel free.
Good night, Nicky. Good night, everybody else.
darts in lovers' eyes. The return of the thin white Duke, throwing darts in lovers' eyes. The return of the thin white Duke, making sure white stains. Once there were mountains on mountains, and once there were embers so with that one side could never be down. Got to keep searching and searching, and oh, what will I be believing when you will connect me with love? Wonderful, wonderful, wonder when have you sought fortune in music and shine? Drink to the men who protect you alive. Drink, drink, drain your glass, raise your glass high. It's not the side effects of the cocaine. I'm thinking that it must be long. It's too late to be grateful. It's too late to be late again. It's too late to be hateful. The European pattern is near. I must be only one in a million. I hope that the day passes over. It's too late to be grateful. It's too late to be late again.
And then he was gone. See you
It was a WNEW FM, just above the Horn and Hard Art Automat. Actually, I think you are our...
I just collected this one down there.
Oh, did you? I think you're really our first bona fide guest at the new place here.
I'm privileged. Good.
Just looking at the great state of dishevelment that everything is in. David is in New York for several things, not the least of which is to let us know about his brand new record, Lodger, which is what I'm most interested in hearing about. David, what you've been up to musically and in general. Last time we talked was about a year and a half ago.
Yes, something like that.
Has that been the length of time between Heroes and Lodger? Is it about a year and a half?
Yes, it must have been. It's been a considerable time, quite a long time.
Last time we talked, you were quite definite in speaking about the various changes that you went through.
Yes.
Personally, from what you loosely refer to as the Ziggy period.
Yes.
To then, and now we are now, and I assume, as with every man, in a year and a half, further changes come about.
I think it's what's happened. There's been a culmination of all the ideas I had while traveling. I mean, I did spend the last 2 years when I wasn't on the road still traveling. I went from country to country. I carried on the Far East, and I kept going back to Africa and taking that as a big triangle through Europe, Africa, and the East. And this album, I think, represents a lot of those ideas, and little funny quirks of musical nature that I picked up in the various countries.
Well, I immediately pick up on African Night Flight.
Yes, that's an obvious example.
One of the tracks on the new album is an obvious example. One of the tunes, by the way, one of the 3 songs that emerged off the record immediately when I heard it through for the first time at home. There are always those songs that are the what I call the initial grabbers.
Yes.
And then there are those songs that are a bit more subtle that start to sneak up on you later on, right? And African Night Flight was one of the ones I...
Yes, that's quite an odd thing.
African nightmare, one-time moment for the hullabaloo, and I slept in the nearest bar. Undermined Sherman went too far. Bent on a windfall rental, so any wonder how the dollar went down. Gonna get a word to Elizabeth father. Hey, oh, we wish me well. Seems like another day I could fly into the eye of God on high. This burning eye will see me through one of these days, one of these days. Gonna get a girl through one of these days. This burning eye will see me through one of these days, one of these days. Gonna get a girl through one of these days. That's a knife fight, pushing my luck, I'll fly like a mad thing. Strict takeoff, skimming over rhino, born and slumberless. Then beast, struggle with a child who's screaming, dreaming, drowned by the drop so steely. Sunshine, sick of you, sick of me. Lust for the field, I've washed and laid like an animal, not one left unlaid. Seems like another day I could fly into the eye of God on high. Seems like another day I could fly into the eye of God on high. Over the bushline, over the trees, rise like a orangutan, that was me. It's burning, I will see me through one of these days, one of these days. Gonna get away through one of these days. It's burning, I will see me through one of these days, one of these days. Gonna get away through one of these days.
Well, that had a strange beginning. As you know, I've been working with Brian Eno for some time now. We have this system where we throw ideas against each other without telling each other. And I started with one complete set of chords, which I got the band to play in the studio, and then Brian came in, and I took everything out except the bass and the drums, left the whole thing empty. And he started working over the top of it. I told him what key it was in, and that's the only knowledge of it that he had. And then we started putting it back together again, and the effect was colossal, and immediately brought back the idea of Africa.
Of course, you and Eno have worked together for on so many various projects by now, by this stage.
2 or 3 years, something like that.
There probably comes a time where two people who create so much together kind of, it's like two people living together. You kind of instinctually know what the other one is thinking, and there's...
Fortunately, that doesn't happen with Brian and I. We're still very surprised by each other's turns of mind, because we don't spend very much time together when we're not in the studio. And he travels as much as I do, so he's been to Malaysia, and I've been over there, and we come back and we've slightly changed our opinions about music, about what we should be doing. So again, we've gone out of sync with each other, which is great for writing purposes.
Does it also make for some tense times in the studio?
Smashing, yeah.
Any one particular one come to mind?
Not really. I think we try and treat the whole thing as gentlemen, so we don't really get frayed tempers, but artistic temper sort of shows. And I think the way that we solve it is that one or the other will leave the studio for a couple of hours and let the other one get on with it, rather than... I think we follow everything through. If one person has an idea, rather than put it down, I think I would leave the studio and let Brian get on with it and see what he makes of it, and then we'll discuss it afterwards. But we never throw an idea out of hand immediately without trying it out.
That's different than one person leaving the studio and slamming the door behind
him. Oh yes, not
Right.
much of that. Not much of that. No, close the door very quietly.
Oh, good.
Not to distract the other person whilst he's working.
One thing that I think kind of remains a constant since the last time we talked, and that is your desire to travel about more than to root yourself in one place.
Yes, I must be running away from something, I've decided. I thought I was running around to catch something up, but I'm not sure now. Maybe I can't get it out of my system.
There's really no place you can really call home.
No.
Yet a good deal of your life is spent with your son.
Yes.
He lives with you much of the time.
Yes, indeed.
And I'm sure, I forgot his name.
Well, it's Zoe.
Zoe, right.
Yep.
How could I forget that? But I did. Zoe must feel home is somewhere. If he were here and I would say, where do you live? He would answer me. He would say, oh, I live in Switzerland or...
I think he'll choose about three. I mean, it depends what part of the year it is. He might say Africa, he might say Germany, he might say Switzerland.
You know, I used to think that was... I have two children of my own, and in the early years of working in radio in the U.S., you go from station to station, working your way up to larger and larger cities. So when my children were real young, there'd be a lot of that. We'd be 6 months in one town and a year in another place and all. And now they're a bit more grown, they're into their teen years, and I find that they are very happy about that.
Yeah.
They kind of see, you know, all my friends have lived in the same house for 12 years, and they like the idea that they've lived in 7 different states and in 11 different towns.
Yes, I think, and also I think it's exciting to see a kid that takes a lot of things very easily in a relaxed fashion. He can see guys dressed in kimonos and things, and it's absolutely no surprise to him at all, and he knows why they're doing it, and he can even speak a little bit to them.
You get the broader
without thinking anything's particularly strange, and he understands a lot of different things that happen in a lot of different countries, and people aren't the same all over the world. And that's just become naturally part of his life.
That's probably the better part of the person's education.
I think it's super. That's great.
Yes.
It's the best thing that can happen to a kid, I think, is to travel extensively.
From a creative point of view, from your point of view, all of the travels you said, I mean, all of the wonderfully different musical influences that there are in all the various regions of the planet must be a great help to someone who creates music as well.
Yes. Yes, because I think if I was locked into this environment, America, for instance, as much as I like American music, you can be confined in your writing if you're stuck within that one culture. And to suddenly be thrown against something like marimbas and kalimbas in Africa is an exotic musical experience, and it generates the kind of excitement that one used to have when you first heard an electric guitar played very loudly.
Right. Somebody, before the record came out a couple of weeks ago, somebody at RCA Records said to me, Dave, that we're going to have the new Bowie album for you in a couple of weeks, and I've heard it, he said to me, and you're going to just love it. It's real rock and roll. And I want to know whether you would you say that Lodger is a rock and roll record?
Ooh.
You know, because that's a pretty pat statement from record company promotion people. They'll always
Again, rock has changed its definition so much. I think, you know, it's good contemporary music or whatever. Yes, I always sort of blanch a bit at rock because I'm not quite sure what that word means anymore. I don't know whether it means the confines of 3 guitars and drums and a specific sort of 4/4 beat. It's not rock in that definition by any means, but it's an interesting and exciting hybrid of contemporary music.
Yes, it's certainly not a Las Vegas lounge.
Not really, no.
we can discount that. Let's talk about the track DJ, which of course one in radio is going to automatically go, oh, look at that, a song called DJ, and it says things like, I am a DJ, I am what I play, I've got believers.
Can't turn around.
I can't turn around, that's right.
No time to that.
The microphone is always right in front of you, and they don't put one behind you as well.
I'm home, lost my dog. You think this is easy? Real listen. I've got a girl out there, I suppose. I think she's dancing with like tantalized now. I think she's dancing. What do I know? I am a DJ, I am what I play. Can't turn around, can't turn around, oh. I am a DJ, I am what I play. Can't turn around, oh no. I am a DJ, I am what I play. I've got believers. your hand if I break his heart, break her heart. He used to be my boss and here he is a puppet dancer. I am the DJ like a believer.
How did the song come about? It's a wonderful song.
It was just a sort of a kind of pastiche thing that one thinks up in a disco, whether you look at the DJ and wonder what he does or why he sort of became a DJ. This sort of lone creative spirit up there in the box. It was very much the dance floor DJ as opposed
Rather
to
the
a
radio
radio
DJ.
And I figured this one as being sort of a reluctant hero. He is sort of a little bit angry that he got thrown out of his other job, and his greatest and most thrilling experience in life is being able to watch his ex-boss dance on the floor beneath him, and he can control him with the speed and tempo of the music.
Oh, that's terrific. Knowing the ego of the radio DJ as well as I do, you might want to best keep that one a secret.
Do you want to compare that with the ego of the rock artist? Battle of the egos, I think.
I was going to suggest that maybe you keep the fact that it's about a disco DJ a secret from the radio DJs, because they wouldn't know. I mean, we're so egocentric that we go, oh, DJ, and when you said that, I was, oh, that's right, they're called DJs too.
Oh, they're magnanimous enough to take a joke.
I'm sure. But the idea of a DJ being what he plays is really
well, he has to be. He has to be so finely tuned in to the atmosphere on the dance floor. If you dare let this a couple of seconds in between the records happen, then his career's blown. I mean, he's got to keep that constant wave of people moving.
Mm-hmm. As long as the subject of the disco DJ has come up. During the last 6 or 8 months or so, there has been a bit of a war, at least here in New York.
I've noticed
the rockers.
that since I've been back here. I've noticed that.
Is that something that's going on here more than elsewhere? Because in the city there is this, you're either a rocker or you're a disco dancer, and the two feel for some reason or other that they're poles apart. I don't quite understand how this all started.
A disco breed hasn't happened as far as I'm aware in Europe. There isn't a breed of people that sort of classify themselves as disco people. I think disco is something that is taken only maybe once or twice a week or something, and the rest of the time they go to their other kinds of clubs. I think they integrate music, a wider style of music into their lives in Europe. It's quite a phenomenon of America, I think, especially the East and West Coast. It's something you don't see anywhere else. I can understand the breaking up into factions. It's sort of cartoons, everything that's happening socially anyway.
Yeah. It would be nice to think, though, that people could just approach music as music and stop trying to find the correct file to file.
Could it possibly be that the political commitment can't be that strong, so they sort of do it in musical form? Something to bite onto, a side to pick. So they pick a disco side or a rocker side. Whereas in Europe,
to align oneself with.
There's quite definite political outlines, and so they can make some kind of commitment in Europe.
Oh, that's interesting.
Speaking off my top of my head there.
No, but it's true. I think people like to feel they're part of a larger group.
I think so very much.
There's
an incredible tribal element to people. They like to break down into small factions that they can handle and adjust themselves to some level in the hierarchy of that particular contingent, don't they?
Yeah, well, I think could be one reason why someone would want to feel that they're part of the rock and roll group.
I think that's probably why disco was so grabbed people so much in the beginning anyway, because it pulled them together and kept them sort of an independent, sort of important unit. Because when they were out there doing something, they could do something creative, they felt, I think, on their own without being told that there was any responsibility to it, a responsibility that either they didn't want or didn't need. They felt in charge, I think, again.
Interesting, for sure.
I don't really know, David.
I'm sure it all sounds very important. I want to turn the attention to another track on Lodger, David Bowie's new album, and that's the one called "Boys Keep Swinging."
Yeah.
A most interesting song, and one of the three, again. In fact, the three tunes that I have mentioned so far, Africa Nights, DJ, and Now Boys Keep Swinging, are the three tracks that immediately grabbed me.
I'm so pleased African's got in there.
Yeah. And
favourite of mine.
And of course, we've only had the record a couple of days, so it takes a long time to digest your music, as with most really good music. A lot of good pop hits you enjoy. Well, there are songs. For me, there are wonderful pop hit records that grab you immediately. You love them to death for about 45 times.
Never been able to do that.
And then
always
those,
always wanted. I think the only time I succeeded
wonderful.
with that was Mott the Hooples thing, All the Young Dudes.
All the Young
That's
Dudes,
the only time I got close to that kind of feeling. Because I wrote for somebody else, I think. It's one of the first. Yes, it was. That was an accident. I wish I could recapture that.
Was it an accident?
It was. It really was.
The collaboration with John Lennon?
Yes, that was strictly off the cuff. I mean, that just all came together in the studio. It was super. Right.
I wonder if I could...
Yes, of course. Use your lighter.
You and John just happened to be in the studio together?
We were both in town at the same time, and I asked John if he'd like to come down to the sessions, and he said he'd love to, and he came down. I had to pick up a guitar, and sort of Carlos Alomar, my rhythm guitarist, started playing a riff, and it just sort of came out from under there somewhere.
Well, that's another one, though, I think that people like immediately, and you wanted to hear it over and over again. And then, but those are the kind of songs that, after a certain period, they become less interesting.
They serve a purpose, an
Yes.
immediate purpose. They capture something which is quite tangible in contemporary time, any sort of slot. And they do sort of invalidate themselves after a bit, and then can be looked back on again in retrospect with sort of nostalgia.
Yeah, you have to take a few months off from
Yes,
it, and then
right.
you could hear them again, which is a secret of programming radio as well. You know, the science of knowing when a song has been overplayed, how long to stay away from it, and then when to bring it back on the radio.
Oh, yes,
is
I can
as
quite
part of the
imagine.
science of especially hit-oriented radio stations.
Well, that's much like putting a show together as well.
I guess, yes.
Yeah, it comes into it.
Back to Boys Keep Swinging. The song itself and the lyrics, and also a film that you made of that song, which a lot of us saw the other night at a little party, brought to mind an old image of yours that I thought you had kind of discarded. And
I
that is
thought
a
it
kind
would
of
be quite a surprise to
androgynous.
Yeah, well, the idea of Boys was to sort of write an ultra-chauvinist overkill sort of song and do it strictly tongue-in-cheek, and I think it's I find it very amusing.
I think it's a wonderful song. Yeah, and you chose to release that as a single in England.
Yes, it's done extraordinarily well.
Heaven loves you. The clouds are for you. Nothing stands in your way when you're a boy. Clothes always fit you. Life is a pop of the cherry when you're a boy. When you're a boy, you can wear the uniform. When you're a boy, other boys check you out. You get a girl. You say your favorite things when you're a boy. Boys, boys, boys keep swinging. Boys always work it out. Unpage the colors. Unfurl the flag. Love just kissed you hello when you're a boy. They'll never clone ya. You're always first on the line when you're a boy. When you're a boy, you can buy a home of your own. When you're a boy,
do you think that it's doing well because do you think that the people are appreciating the tongue-in-cheekness of it and the humor of it, or do you think since it's a song done by David Bowie, people are taking it seriously?
I think the humour of it. I mean, I've not let I've kept my humour a bit redundant on vinyl. I thought I'd unleash it in all its power, and so it sort of crept in.
Well, I love the stanza, when you're a boy, you can buy a home of your own. When you're a boy, learn to drive and everything. You'll get your share when you're a boy.
Yes, it's all that.
Well, I certainly hope that people can see the humor, because so many people are taking so many things so very seriously these days. I could tell you a little story that you might enjoy, which might point that up. I've been playing a Donna Summer record, Hot Stuff.
Oh, yes.
On the air recently, a wonderful disco record, and back to the rockers and disco war, and a lot of people are complaining vehemently that I'm playing it. And then yesterday morning I played 2 Frank Zappa records, which kind of make fun of disco music.
Ah, yes.
Dancing Fool.
Isn't that Shake Your Booty?
Yes,
album?
from the album Shake Your Booty.
Oh, that's an extraordinary album.
I played Dancing Fool and a song he did a while back called Disco Boy, and both of them kind of make fun of disco people. And a listener called me complaining about those 2 records, and I said, well, why are you complaining about them? And he said, well, because they make fun of disco songs, and therefore they make fun of black people.
Oh, no.
And I was left just kind of staring at the receiver, and I just said, thank you for calling and goodbye, because there's no way you can answer anybody with an absurd charge like that.
That's extraordinary.
That's what I mean about people taking things so seriously.
Yeah.
It is extraordinary, and he really meant it, and he was sincere.
Yeah.
That if you make, somehow a tongue-in-cheek record about disco dancers, was offensive to black people.
Oh, that's pathetic.
Are you happy with the way the album came out?
Yes. I can't wait to start again, though.
To start recording?
I tend to fly away from an album as soon as I've finished it. I immediately throw the whole thing out of my mind. I often don't listen to an album that I've finished for months after its release, if I can help it, and get working on ideas for the next piece of work.
Would you feel differently about Lodger? Is that what you meant when you said, you can't wait to get to the next one, meaning this is done?
Absolutely, yes. That's it. It's like doing a painting.
There's a time lag also.
I can't do anything more to it, and I can't listen to it anymore because I've got to press on with. Can't walk down those same old avenues every time. So.
Right. You thinking about some concerts?
I'm thinking about several things. I'm thinking about some kind of stage production. I don't know if it'll take concert form. Something I'm writing. It might take me a long time to write. I think I'll probably do a tour next year.
Meaning sometime in 1980?
Yes, yes. It's a lovely year to go out on tour, isn't it? 1980. How frightening. How do you start off a decade? Oh.
Well, do you remember starting off in 1970? How'd we do that?
Don't remind me.
1980, coming up pretty soon. The David Bowie live shows have always been more than just concerts. The last one, which I saw at the Garden, you employed some magnificent lights and theatrical devices. I remember a bank of what seemed like fluorescent or neon tubes.
Went on forever, yes.
Behind the stages.
Yeah.
It was a great show, the last one. So a lot of people look forward to another Bowie tour.
What I loved about that was the pure simplicity of just using white light. No filters, no colours.
It was very startling.
Amazing what you can do with just white light. If you control it, it can create the most incredible environments and atmospheres just by the different tones of white and how the intensity of the light.
Are you painting a lot these days?
I haven't picked up a brush in weeks, which is unfortunate. I really must get back to work on that. I've let that slide over the last few weeks.
Speaking of visuals and graphics, I don't know how many people listening might have seen the album yet because it is so new. I don't even know if it's in the stores.
I always wanted,
Tell me about
I always
this
wanted
guy.
my feet on the front, and I succeeded.
Describe it.
Okay, he's obviously the lodger. He's caught in some kind of time warp. He's going backwards and forwards at the same time. I wanted that the kind of effect that one imagines you would have if you were caught in G-force in an aircraft. Suddenly, for no reason, he's whisked off his feet in this bathroom where he's combing his hair and sort of getting ready for the day. Seems to have hurt his hand.
Yes, he's combing his hair with a bandaged hand.
And he's just being suddenly pushed through this force, backwards and forwards.
Having no idea what's happening to him.
And that's sort of how I wrote the album. I couldn't think of any other way to illustrate it, of juxtaposing the most foreign ideas upon each other and creating a third element out of that. And sort of visually, it's sort of like that. It's pressure points of different influences.
Of course, the word lodger is, I think, a word that is used more in England than by Americans.
Yes, I was wondering about that. I had to check with a couple of Americans to find out whether
a lodger is someone who is boarding.
A boarder, yes. Is it called a boarder over here?
I guess. People don't usually use the word lodger, although there will be signs on home, room.
Lodgers are generally salesmen and sales reps and whatever, and they move around from town to town, and they lodge with, sort of nice, cheap accommodation. But they usually lodge in family homes. The family has a spare room going, and it needs the extra income, so it's
Okay. Well, David, it is always a pleasure talking to you.
Great pleasure being here.
And I'm glad you came up and said hello this time around.
Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Enjoy your stay in
Thank
New
you
York.
for having me.
They pulled in just behind the bridge. He lays her down. He frowns. Gee, my life's a funny thing. Am I still too young? He kissed the then and there. She took his ring, took his babies. It took him minutes, took her nowhere. Heaven knows he'd have taken anything. All night. She wants a young American. She wants the young American all night. She wants the young American standing right through the picture window. She finds a slinky vagabond. He calls as he passes a Ford Mustang. Heaven forbid she take anything but the beat and the stifle for nothing. This is a step and cuts his hand, showing nothing. It sweeps like a song. She cries, where above Papa's hero's gone. All night. She wants a young American. Young American. Young American. She wants the young American. All night. Well, she wants the young American. All the way from Washington. Her breadwinner begs off the bathroom floor. We live for just these 20 years. Do we have to die for the 50 more? All night. He wants the young America. Young America. So young America. He wants the young America.
Something to snare.
I'm very surprised that you're so simply dressed today because we were imagining something else.
Oh, I'm always very simply dressed, I think.
最近はいつもシンプルな格好で。
Except on stage.
まあ舞台の上では別ですけど。
なぜですか?
What was the reason for your change from your image before until now?
Well, up until I think 3 years ago,
3年前までは、
I used to write characters, but then I stopped writing characters.
人物を作ってたんですって。
So there were no more characters to play on stage.
で、最近はその舞台では、その自分が演技する人物を描かなくなったので、
So I stopped dressing like them.
自分もその衣装をそういうふうにドレスするのをやめたんです。
じゃあ曲をやって演じてたところね。じゃあまたこれからこう何年かやっていくうちにまた変わってきますね。
So would you be changing eventually also in the years to come?
Only if I start writing characters again.
またそういうキャラクターを作るようになったらまた自分もそういうふうになるんじゃないですか。
そうですか。だからもう2度目だったはずですけど、とりあえず 日本がお好きだってね。
This is your second time in Japan, but you seem to like it very much.
So, working is my second time, but I've been here many times just as a tourist.
Oh, really? 音楽家としては2度目ですけれども、よく観光に出してたんです。
そうですか。
And why do you like Japan?
Well, when I started doing stage work with music, I was very influenced by Kabuki theatre and Neo theatre.
その音楽の勉強の時に、とってもその歌舞伎とかのもので影響されてるんです。
And I was originally with a mime company.
A mime company? で、マインカンパニーって何ていうのかしら、パントマイムをずっとやってらしたんです。
So there was always
ですから、つながりがあったんです、その日本の舞台と。
そうですか。どの辺に興味があるんですか、歌舞伎とか。
In what aspect do you have most interest in the kabuki?
Movement.
Movement. 動きです。
And the discipline of movement.
あとなんていうのかしら、自分をなんていうのかしら、絶えず、なんていうのかしら、自分を動かす努力ですか、に対してすごく興味になったんです。
それでなんかよく作品の中で日本が出てきますね。そういうことで使ってる。
And is that why you have many Japanese influences in your music?
Yes, the character, Ziggy Stardust, that I first wrote, was very much Japanese theatre meets American science fiction.
ジギスターダストっていうキャラクターを昔作りましたけれども、その方は日本の舞台とアメリカのサイエンス SF と合併したものなんです。
そうですか。で僕らはデビッド・ボーイさんというとこの音楽の世界の人かと思うと、今パントマイムの話も出てきましたけど、大変いろんなことに興味があって、今大変映画に興味を持ってらっしゃる。
Yes, we were surprised that since you are a musician, you would be interested in so many different fields, and that you're interested in movies right now.
Yes. I've never thought of myself as a musician, particularly.
自分は音楽家っていうふうに自分では思ってはなかったんです。
So people ask me if I were a musician or an actor or a painter or whatever, because I still paint a lot. So I called myself a generalist.
で、今だに自分はいろんな絵を描いたり音楽を描いたりいろんなことしてるので、自分のことをジェネラリストっていう名前をつけてるんです。それは一般化っていうか何でも一般的にするっていう意味じゃないですか。ですから自分が何するにしても自由でいられるっていうことですね。
そうですか。それは僕らもそうなりたいなと思いますね。
そうですね。
世界的な発展なのかな。形を一つに決めないというところがね。
Is it something that's universal right now that you don't commit yourself to just one thing and that you become a generalist?
I think it's very important to try and feel every aspect of the arts if you're going to be an artist.
もし自分を芸術家っていうふうに呼ぶんだとしたら、どんな芸術に対しても興味があってできるようにならないと、その芸術家って自分を呼べないんじゃないですか。
そうかそうか。で、今ちょっと机の上で言ってくださいね。我々はジュースを飲もうと思ったら、彼は非常にミルクということで、これは何ですか、健康のためにですか？
Do you drink milk for your health?
Yes.
そうです。
そうです。日本の牛乳どうですか？
Do you like Japanese milk?
It's an interesting taste.
とても興味のある味なんですって。
興味のある味。
珍しいって言いますか。
とても珍しいです。
And how is it interesting?
It's unlike European milk.
Yes.
But there again, European milk is unlike American milk.
ヨーロッパの牛乳とちょっと味は違うんですって。でもアメリカの味も違うんです。息子さんもいらっしゃるんですけどね。
いらっしゃったんですね。
ゾイっていうお名前をつけたらしいんですけど。You have a son and his name is Zoe.
One of his names.
One of his names?
Yes.
一つの名前が Zoe なんです。
Zoe. なんか意味があるんですか？
Is there a meaning to Zoe or?
No.
No. ないです。
じゃあ感覚的なもんだったね。いくつになるんですか？
And how old is she?
7 and a half.
7歳半です。
どうですか？お父さんに似てますか？
Does he look like you?
Yes.
What part?
What would I?
あれは似てないんです。
じゃあ、下の方かな。
髪の下。
Yeah, he's blonde and...
blonde
and very lively.
とても元気
But he's
の
not
いい。
interested in music at all.
あんまり音楽には興味ないんです。
興味ないの？
ねえ。
じゃあ、お父さんなんでやらないかな？
He's not going to take after you
No,
then.
like mathematics.
あ、そうなんです。
僕は好きなの。でもお父さんも小さい時は頭良かったじゃないですか？
Was he very smart when you were a little boy?
No.
あんまり良くなかった。あんまり頭良くなかったんです。
そうですか？経験しすぎよね。そうなんだ。
よく怒ったりしたんです。
で、今お住まいはどこですか？
And where are you living now?
I try not to live anywhere. I like to travel all the time.
できるだけ一つの場所に住むのが好きじゃないので、できるだけあちこちへ動くんです。
そのあちこちへ動くのは世界的な規模ですね。
It's very, what do you call it, worldly or international. Is there a reason why you travel a lot?
Well, for my writing, I think I can't write if I get too comfortable in a country. So I have to keep moving to new countries too.
一つの国に落ち着いてしまうと音楽書けなくなるんですって。ですからその自分の脳を動かすためにあちこちの国へ住み着く。
ああ、そうです。日本に住んでみたらどうですか？
Why don't you live in Japan?
Well, it has occurred to me, but I don't think I would live in Tokyo. I think I would live south. Yeah, I like Kyoto very much, of course.
住んでる場所は今は思いませんけれども、住むんでしたら東京じゃなくて京都かどっか南の方に住みたいです。
なんかそういう日本の歴史的なものに興味がありそうですね。
You're interested in Japanese history or the culture?
The philosophers I've always been interested in. There are a number of authors I like. I like Mishima very much.
日本の哲学に対してとっても興味を持ってまして、あと三島由紀夫さんも。
ね、そうですね。映画じゃなかったりの話ですもんね。
We heard that you're painting his picture.
I've done one painting of him, yes.
油絵を。
油絵三島由紀夫さんね。で、時間もなくなりましたけど、これからデビッド・ボーイさんの出られた映画ができますね。君のがと。
You were in the movie with Kim Novak and Marlene Dietrich.
What
is the name of the movie?
Just a Gigolo.
Just a Gigolo.
懐かしい映画の前ですけどね。それまた楽しみにしましょう。
We're looking forward to the movie.
So am I.
でも楽しみに。見てないんです。
見てないの。そうですか。とりあえず日本のちょっと忙しいでしょうけどね。日本楽しみに帰ってくる。
We hope that you'll enjoy Japan, although you'll be very busy here.
Yes, I always enjoy Japan.
いつも楽しみです。日本にいらっしゃると。
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now, into this ever-changing world of current affairs, we welcome a chameleon of show business. David Bowie is, to say the least, a colourful star, and certainly an ever-changing one. At one time, his clothes, his haircut, his makeup were purple and orange, designed to shock, and by shocking, entertain. Latterly, though, he has turned his attention to the cinema, and with it, a complete change of image. The proof of that is his latest film, Just a Gigolo, in which he stars with Marlene Dietrich. He plays the part of a young lieutenant at the end of the First World War, coming to terms with the decadent Berlin of the 20s and the rising Nazi threat. He's in London this week promoting the film, and in it, Bowie looks much like the boy next door, a far cry from the teenage pop star who wallowed in the outrageous and was worshipped by millions.
Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild in dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet. So I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse how the others must see a faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. Change it, the face is strange. Change it, don't tell them to blow up out of it. Change it, the face is strange. Change it, where's the shame you've left us up to our next of it? Now they change me, but you can't twist time. Strange fascination rock and rollers. Changes, changes. Faster now, you're gonna get older. Time may change me, but I can't trace down. I said that time may change me, but I can't trace down.
There's another David Bowie. Is this the real one this time?
Well, I think so, yes.
Why did you change for him? What was the need for it? Was it just beginning? Or was it just something...
The point was not to sort of... when I started writing songs, nobody would record them, so I had to do them myself. And I didn't, being a Capricorn, I didn't want to expose myself to the public, so I developed a series of characters which fell in line with the material that I was writing.
So behind that all the time was a real David Bowie?
At times, yes, I lost control a couple of times.
So did the roles that you played on stage then kind of take you over sometimes in your private life?
Yes.
What about all those incredible, that period when you wore those outrageous feminine clothes and the makeup? Well, they were. I mean, a lot of people, I thought David Bowie, and I immediately associate you with that.
Yeah.
That particular period. I mean, did that carry over into real life? Did you wear those kind of clothes in your home?
I only used to wear that kind of stuff when I was about 17 or 18. By the time I reached the ripe old age of 20, 21, I'd got into high-heel shoes and things. They came about through Japanese theatre more than anything. I tried to put together kabuki and pantomime. Over here, of course, it's mime. Mime techniques to help enhance this character called Ziggy Stardust, who is the be-all and end-all of rock and roll stars.
A lot of people looking at some of those roles that you played, I think would have been very shocked and found them very outrageous.
Yeah.
And also there's a tremendous tendency to think of rock stars as being a bit sick. I mean, obviously there's, I presume, a lot more to you than that. Did it worry you that people have that kind of image?
No, I'm very sick.
Are you?
Yes, I became a rock star. I could have been a painter.
But there's a need, what, to just get something out of your system?
No. I wanted to be some kind of artist. I wanted to prove myself in some field as an artist. And I didn't think I was a very good painter, so I went to music.
You've had tremendous publicity over the years of your marriage to Andy, and you've admitted that you're bisexual. Was that, in a way, publicity that you thought that helped your career, or did you actually think of that as a tremendous inclusion of your... Well, the publicity you had about your relationship?
No, that evolved, I think, because of the fact that I said many years ago that I was a bisexual. But that happened in the course of the conversation.
But do you resent that kind of publicity? Do you think that's an intrusion on your privacy?
No, it's not an intrusion on my privacy.
Doesn't
Decline
worry.
to read it.
You
It's like
play...
television, you can switch it off if it's not interesting.
You see, now you're looking exactly like the character that you play in the film that you've just done. So I wondered whether the fact that you were actually now playing another role on it, in another year or two we're going to see yet another.
I had this show a few months before the film.
You're not. This is really you. This is not you just still sort of playing the role of Paul in the film.
One wonders. I was working with Nicholas Roden in Manchester to work a couple of years ago, and he warned me that when one's finished a film, the role often carries over for many months after the film. Then I should be prepared for that. I think that happened to me when I was performing the characters that I was performing in America and England. But I didn't have a director to tell me that they would carry over, so they were built up and became a mess, sort of conglomerate characters.
Why did you want to make this particular film, just to begin?
Marlene Dietrich was dangled in front of me for one thing. Also, I got on extremely well with David Hemmings. And so between those two things, I think I was pulled into it.
What was it like working with Marlene Dietrich?
I wish I knew. I must ask somebody who did work with her.
Why?
Well, what happened, for the duration of the film, they were trying to get Marlene to come to Germany, but she wouldn't, because since, I think, the period in the 50s, she's been reluctant to go back because her views differed very much with what was happening in Germany during the war. So she stayed in Paris and said, I will do my film in Paris. All the way through the film, she said this. And I quite agreed with her. And we talked to each other on the phone, and we decided it would be fine if I did my bit in Berlin, and she did her bit in Paris, and the two were gelled together.
You never actually met her?
No. But I think it's quite nice in the context of the film because she's forever the observer, really. And knowing that, it makes her even more of the observer. The mystical, wonderful cocktail character that she is.
Well, let's have a look at you and Marlene Dietrich now in this film, at this scene. This is where you actually do appear with her. She's playing the madame of a very select group of young beaux, the gigolos, and attracted by this good-looking young man, she decides to recruit him.
Champagne? Dom Perignon, my favorite. Dancing, music, champagne. The best way to forget until you find something you want to remember. Have you got a military education?
Yes, my father was Colonel von Vyshkovsky.
Languages?
Of course.
How's your French?
Oh, I've spent a great deal of time in one of their hospitals.
Why all the questions? Let's call it an interview. A recruitment, like. Isn't that the term the military use?
Yes.
What did you rank?
Lieutenant.
Well, Lieutenant, I'm the head of a regiment of sorts. The Gigolos.
Yes, your lieutenant told me.
Lieutenant, there's one thing I don't like. Poor fantasy in speech. Lacks charm. And you don't seem to lack anything.
Do you like anything, David Burr?
Isn't she lovely?
She's marvelous.
I wish I'd met her
It's fantastic.
a long time ago.
I'm picking up the line she addressed you in the film. Do you feel you lack anything, or you got everything you want now?
Yes, the train ticket to Penge. I've got some friends out there. I promised I'd go and see them this week, but I haven't had the time to get down there.
Are you going to give up music now and concentrate on acting? Just a new whole direction?
I'd like to expand my activities, as they say. No, I enjoy writing very much.
Is writing just music or writing all sorts of writing?
Funnily enough, I am sort of studiously trying to write a book of short stories based on things that I've done. But writing music generally. Performance on stage, I think I've decided really to cut it down for once every 2 years because I find it boring after the first 10 shows. It starts to become repetitious every night.
So will there be more acting, more films?
Yes, there will. I'm heading towards directing.
Are you? That's a final hope, is it?
No, I want to be a good painter again. It's my really big dream.
And are you painting at the moment?
Yes, all the time.
And writing and acting and still singing? Yes. Lots of things. Is there another film
I
planned
have
or
a
not?
selection in front of me which I'm very proud of, and I'm going through them deciding which one I'm going to do. That's exciting.
Well, we look forward to seeing you. David Bowie, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you very much.
When you're living in a place, is that because you, again, want to be isolated
Yes.
in a foreign place?
Yes, now. At the moment. It wasn't a couple of years ago. I wanted to put myself in dangerous situations, which I did. Put myself in any situation which I feel I can't cope with.
Dangerous situations,
Yeah.
such as what? Can you explain that?
Areas where I have to be in sort of social contact with people, which I'm not very good at doing.
I don't quite know what you mean now.
Well, I went to Los Angeles and I lived there for a couple of years, which is a city I really detest.
Yeah.
So I went to live there among people that I didn't like very much to see what would happen to my writing.
And then did you find you did detest the place?
Oh, quite twice as much as when I went there.
Well, what did you think you were going to detest about it before you got there? and
Everything it
found
represented.
Such as what? I mean, but do you dislike America?
No, I like the plains of America. I like New Mexico very much, and the Rio de Grande and around that area. But I don't like American cities too much. I like the real cities like Chicago and Detroit.
I can't quite see what the difference between Los Angeles
Well,
and
it's sort of a
and-
callous. It's sort of a blister on the backside of humanity, really. Whereas Detroit has real people energetically trying to survive. In Los Angeles, it's fabrication. In real life, where I deal with fabrication in public, but my real life is not at all fabricated.
You know, you said that you want to be in situations which you're frightened of, right?
Yes.
But how easy is it for you to mix, generally speaking, with people? Because surely you're so famous that people would recognize you straight away, and therefore...
No, they don't at all.
Really?
No, I have no problem with that, really.
But then, perhaps, is that because you do go deliberately to a new place?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why I went to Berlin when I left America. I wanted to have another kind of friction. And so I went to Berlin, and I found the friction I wanted.
What was that?
People living under the impression that everything might collapse very quickly. And people are very serious there and don't care too much for flippancy. It's a very tight life there, surrounded by a wall with machine guns, which is ever coming in on you. The more you live there, the longer you live there, the more it comes in. And the wall, by the end, feels as though it's right around the apartment or house that you're staying in.
When you lived in Germany, did you get involved with people there? I mean, writers and artists?
Yes, some of the new wave bands and some of the serious writers there. I quite enjoy them very much. But most of the time I spent on my own.
When you went to Japan, which is not where you are now, right?
Yeah.
What was why there next?
Well, when I first started trying to bring pantomime into rock and roll, my other influence at the time, apart from German expressionism, was kabuki theatre. So I'm from kabuki. I then got interested in the cultural, religious aspects of Japan.
What do you find?
And the balance between the heritage of Japan and the modern world that they have, and how they balance it, which is very precarious, to say the least. There's a friction there as well.
When you go to a place, I'm not a very good traveller myself. I resist it because if I can't speak the language, I don't feel I'm going to be able to communicate and so forth, and it sort of frightens me. When you go, what's the kind of first thing you get to know about a place in order to make you start to feel a little as if you belong to it?
Cafes and bars, I think, and where to buy food.
Yeah, right. You paint, and what painter do you think has influenced you?
Eric Heckel.
You've described yourself as a writer.
Yeah.
What writers have influenced you?
William Burroughs.
William Burroughs. Is he the only?
I might change my mind tomorrow, but if you're asking me immediately, those are the first things that come to mind.
Yeah. And as a child, who do you think influenced you?
Donald Duck.
Was he your favourite character then?
I loathed him. He made me learn how to hate.
You know, that's very odd. I've always hated Donald Duck. He sends me quite crackers when I hear him.
Very unlikable.
Did you dislike Mickey Mouse as much?
Yes.
Did you like any of the traditional people that you're supposed to like? Like, did you like Winnie the Pooh?
No. No.
Rupert Bear?
No. No, I didn't.
Did you have a teddy bear?
No, I didn't. I don't think... I can't remember having anything like that at all. No, I never liked children's things very much. I always liked paintings from a very early age.
Thank you very, very much indeed for talking to me.
Pleasure.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
To talk to the great man about his new album, Lodger, and you'll hear the results of their conversation after we've heard this track called Fantastic Voice.
This fantastic voice, she turned to a roll drum, and we never get old. Remember this, dignity is valuable, but our lives are valuable.
all sort of rounded off in a fairly sort of optimistic kind of fashion. So I guess that must mean I'm glad we finished the three of them, but no, it doesn't really mean that. It means that I think we've done something highly successful.
Why did you decide just to do 3 albums? I mean, was that an arbitrary?
Yeah, oh, completely. Yeah, I like the word triptych, and I've always wanted to use that. So when I started with Brian, they said, well, are you going to work together? I said, yes, we're going to do a triptych. And then we sort of decided, yes, well, we might as well now we've said it. And we did.
The suggestions over tones there of a box set eventually.
Well, we're box set people, really. I think.
Tell me, how pleased are you with the work that you do? I mean, you're very highly critical of your own material.
Yes, I go off and on things incredibly. I mean, I think the only thing that I never went off was Diamond Dogs. I really enjoyed that album. I still enjoy it. Some things I find hard to come to terms with. I enjoy very much the last 3 things. Low, Heroes, Lodger. They still have incredible fascination for me.
What about the earlier days?
Yeah, well, I'm very on Laughing Gnome again. I think that's probably becoming one of my favourite tracks.
So, any surprises on this album?
Well, I seem to have found my sense of humour again, which I think helps one through life, this life especially. There are some quite sort of light-hearted tracks on it, which is somewhat of a surprise to me. It's not quite as morose as some of the sort of East European feeling that you get on the last 2. I guess that had an awful lot to do with being in New York. When you go to New York, you sort of do as the Romans do, and there's mostly Romans in New York, so one sort of gets very Roman about it.
I always thought it was a bit of a myth, you know, this idea of going to New York and coming up with different feelings that you wouldn't have experienced anywhere else. I mean, it does happen to you, but actually developing it through the music and through the lyrics, that happens too.
Yes, the reason being that the people sort of dictate that. I mean, in Berlin, everybody's sort of very thoughtful and slowly arrive at decisions. And sort of the whole feeling of the city gets through to you in a sort of insidious way. It sort of worms its way into you. Whereas New York, everything's so totally upfront and fast and exciting. Superficially, I mean, I haven't been there long enough to find out if it really is exciting and up, but the whole sort of atmosphere is electrifying and being very prone to that kind of thing. I sort of took off with it.
The title of the album, We All Know You're a Traveller, would seem to indicate that it's quite a personal album. Yeah. Looking at the tracks, they would seem to, on the surface at least, reflect the vibes you've got from a number of places.
Yeah. Well, I chose Lodger because I couldn't spell Kierkegaard.
No, actually, I'm not sure if I can spell lodger. Yes, I can. If I can't, I can learn it from the album cover. I just wanted something that would sort of casually put the whole album together. There's no deep concept behind the title. You seem to have settled down with something of a lineup now. There's Carlos is still with you, and there's Dennis.
Yeah. And George, mate.
George.
Yeah.
Does that mean that there's a fair bit of empathy going in the studios when you get together?
Yes, I mean, we've got a wonderful situation. I mean, they want to work on other things apart from my stuff, obviously, and we all get plenty of time away from each other to develop in different areas. So when we do come together, most of us have got some new influences that we haven't been able to tell each other about. So it does become a sort of a rewarding partnership. So I enjoy it very much. A lot of fun working with them.
In terms of any of those who come as a new wave, you must have a pretty unusual relationship with these guys, because on the one hand you must represent a lot of what they've been kicking against, and on the other hand a lot of them have been copying you. So how do you feel about that?
I'm PP. I'm post-punk. As the smart set say.
Okay, well, finally returning to the album, is there any one track that you think you feel closest to at the moment that reveals something of the inner man?
Yeah, well, not really, no. There's one track that I'm very fond of, which is called Yeshasi.
Very Eastern-sounding David Bowie from his album, which is called Roger on RCA. The track is Yasatin. The other tracks you heard were Fantastic Voyage and the single Boys Keep Swinging. And in between them, David was talking to our old friend and his, Stuart Grundy.